we talk CEDIA awards, power plans, and DTS dialogue. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 449, Having a Plan. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matthew Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Alex Capecelatro. He's the founder of Josh.ai. How you doing, Alex?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then we have my good friend and occasional combatant in the world of football, Mr. Steve Greenblatt. He's the CEO of Control Concepts. But this week, both of our teams sucked, so it doesn't matter. We don't have to talk about it. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing okay. It's good to be here. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick this off first with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. CEDIA reveals the winners of the 2024 CEDIA Smart Home Awards Americas. This happened last week, 2 weeks ago, over at CEDIA Expo in a big new event. So congratulations to all the winners. You can go read through the article, see where everyone placed and who won, et cetera, et cetera. You can get inspired, all those good things. Alex, you were obviously there. You were kind of hosting it. Just give us a quick tidbit on why this is important, why you as a CEDIA member should be involved in the awards, and what it means to the winners.
Yeah, this was a really great event, partly because the last couple of years, CEDIA Awards have not always been great events. You know, these take place during CEDIA Expo. There are a lot of competing events. There's a lot going on. And quite frankly, they've not always been my favorite events to go to. But this year, we decided to do things different. So for those who don't know, I'm the chair of CEDIA right now. I serve on the board. Mostly today, I'm not speaking on behalf of CEDIA, but right now I will briefly. And I'll just say, we decided to change it up. Instead of it being a ticketed event, this time it was an event that was basically free for attendees. And we had 350 people, full room, a lot of excitement. I think it's important that CEDIA acknowledges some of the best integrators, manufacturers, and projects that we see throughout the year. I'd like to see them continue to grow. I think there's still a lot of folks that are not submitting for one reason or another, but at the end of the day, we acknowledge some pretty amazing projects, some really great products. We did a Hall of Fame tribute. And then towards the end, we did the Lifetime Achievement Award, which this year was acknowledging Rich Green. And those who don't know Rich Green, he is a tremendous CEDIA volunteer and asset, teaches about new innovation, Silicon Valley, what's going on. So I just thought it was a really nice event. It was Friday night, and it was kind of the end of a lot of people's CEDIA Expo, because Saturday, of course, things slow down quite a bit. So I was happy. I felt like the energy was really high, and I can't wait to see it just keep growing next year.
Yeah. Again, it's phenomenal to see the work that the members and the community are doing. That's fantastic. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to a story that comes to us from Residential Systems. Rosewater Energy emphasizes having a power plan for every project. Essentially, the U.S. power grid, and honestly, the Canadian one as well, are continuing to grow more antiquated, and so does the potential harm to many of a home's electronic devices, which is why you need a power plan. Steve, let me start with you on this. And again, go take a look at the story. There's a great graphic there that kind of shows the three levels of a power plan. Steve, what is the importance of honestly just having a plan and explaining that plan or that plan's options to your customers so that they understand the situation when it comes to power in their home, in their projects?
Well, I think this comes down to maintaining uptime and maintaining a reliable implementation and control and obviously keeping your lights on and we all have been hit by weather in many ways over the past few years. It's I don't think that any part of at least the North America has been spared, and being able to keep communication and have people are working from home, having systems up and being able to rely on the fact that you can continue to exist, it is critical these days. So this is a good example of why we need to have more systems that are talking to each other too. One of the things that we do is we work with products and implement API integration, and we need to be able to have control points to be able to and sensors to be able to report back when something is failing or when there is a critical crisis situation, so that we can trigger a backup. And so not only having the backup in place, but being able to switch over to them in a seamless manner is also very critical. But we talk about monitoring a lot, especially on the commercial side, and this is a great example of where that comes into play, and we can really get a lot of value out of having intelligent systems that integrate together within the home.
That's a great point. Alex, let me come over to you. I have been very, well, I'll say I'm on the fence, which is probably the most accurate term for this. I am on the fence about how much the integration world gets involved in the generator side. I fully endorse and understand the management side, the control side, the monitoring side, the generation side, whether it be a traditional generator, solar, off an electric car, it doesn't really matter. There are times when that seems to be something that, in my mind, I'm not sure that's what most integrators want to be involved in on that level. What's our role in this?
So this is complicated for me to think about, partly because I'm not a customer of any of this. I'm not super well versed in any of this, but I've been hearing about this for years, and it's not just Rosewater. I hear about the stuff Tesla's doing and others are doing, and so my initial thought is we have an opportunity to look at this energy market similar to how we look at networks. At the end of the day, we're not controlling networks a lot once the infrastructure is up and running. But if the network fails, all of our stuff becomes a failure point. This is similar. I don't see control needing to do a lot of switching on and off, who's getting power and how things are being regulated. Maybe there's a little bit of that, but I don't think there's a lot. However, if you lose power, you go to a backup generator and only certain subsystems are going to get partitioned. If we don't have any control on what's going on, we can't help the client, right? We can't understand what's going on. And so I think there's an opportunity in having a more reliable system for the client where when the power trips, you go to the backup generator. Some of our networking equipment and subsystems that we need to control are still up and running. I think that's a place where the integrator can add value. That being said, there's a lot more than just what I described. There's, what's happening with solar and offloading different, energy to and from batteries and stuff. So I don't know. I get really confused. And I think part of it is because the price points of any of this are just so high that you can't play around. An example that I think we can all understand is on the networking side, before I put in a crazy ruckus system for a 20,000 square foot home, I understand what an Eero system is like in a smaller project. I get what I can do with it. I get what it does. And then I understand where it starts to have its limitations. I think we need a lower end Rosewater to kind of understand the concept, be able to deploy it into smaller projects, and then start to build this into what we're doing in bigger projects. Because I'll talk to clients who are spending, $250,000 to $500,000 on their tech budget, and it's an additional $100K to put something like this in, at least from what I've looked into. Maybe it's come down since I last looked, but it's not an inexpensive investment. And so the net result is it needs to be a really strong value proposition for someone to bite that bullet. So I have more questions and answers, but I'm curious from you guys. When I read this article, my initial thought was, what's the news? Like, yes, this is what Rosewater's been talking about for a long time, but is there an innovation? Is there something new? Is there something changing? So I'll throw it back on both of you guys. Is there something new that people like me who are ignorant might need to know about?
I don't think there is. I've followed the power generation side for a little bit. I've gone through the training and been certified for our company in some solar battery storage systems. We've done a lot of work looking into Tesla. We've done a lot of work with Generac. We have clients that have that. Um, I think part of the pushback that I've had internally in our company and that I hear from a lot of other integrators is the fact that you can only play so much because every part of the generation side requires electricians. So it's not like you're bringing in some speakers and you're going to play with them or some networking gear and you're going to just sit there and fiddle. Yes, you could do that in your house from an electrical standpoint, but as soon as you start playing with panels, most districts that's a completely different conversation. And again, you need an electrician involved. So it's not, to your point, it's not that it's something we can as an industry just go play around with. It's expensive to get your foot in the door, and it's expensive to fiddle with it because you can't do most of it. I don't know if there's a big uh, newsworthy aspect of it other than we're getting more and more conversations about the instability of power right now, which again, I don't know what the solution to that is. I know I bought a generator to play with, and it has not got out of the package in my garage since I bought it. But it looks really nice. And in the event of an emergency, it might be useful. Keyword on might, because it's in the box. It might not even work. I have no idea. We'll see. All right, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from CE Pro. DTS employs AI to make it easier to hear dialogue in shows and movies. They're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to try and improve the home theater experience. We've all been through this. You're watching a show or a movie. You can't hear the dialogue. You're voluming up so you can hear it. And then something loud happens and it wakes the kids and someone yells at you for it being too loud. This seems to be a nightly occurrence for me. Maybe it is for Steve too, because I know you're probably dealing with this occasionally. Alex, I don't think you're dealing with this yet, which is fantastic. But let me start with you, Alex. My direct bone to pick with this topic is I love the fact that DTS is trying to do something to solve this. I'm a big proponent of the speech enhancement tool on some of the AVRs and products like the Sonos Arc and the Beam, where you can hit that toggle and it enhances the dialogue. I tried to watch a show 2 nights ago with my wife, and we've got kids sleeping in the next room, and we literally could not hear the dialogue over the backing soundtrack. My bone to pick is not with DTS or with the producers of the TVs or the soundbars or whatever. It's with the production engineers who are mixing this so poorly. Should we be raising a bigger stink with the studios that make content for not understanding that we don't need the soundtrack louder than the vocals?
Yeah, this is a strange one on so many levels. I feel like we're deploying ridiculous technology to solve a problem that we've created, we meaning
Yeah.
humanity, not meaning we, the three in this room. But you're right. This is not something that a DTS should have to solve, and we should have to go and spend, a lot of money on equipment to solve. If the people producing the content would just do it in a way that made sense, I don't fully understand how they got here. I don't fully understand why this exists the way it does. Um, Maybe there's some rationale that is just not easily explainable. I'm not sure. But my initial thought when I read this article was I agree this is a problem. It's strange that we have to solve it, and will we still have to solve it a year from now?
Yes.
Maybe, maybe not. So maybe this is a technology that doesn't make sense to invest in, depending on how long this problem is going to exist. But then my next thought was, why AI? Like, this is a simple software problem. I don't understand what AI is doing in this application.
Marketing, Alex. It's marketing.
So, yeah, a lot of it just made me kind of scratch my head and say, as a homeowner, do I understand this problem? Yes. Would I buy this solution the way that it was presented here? No, because it feels a little bit circumspect.
Mitch, the producer, knows me so well as he feeds me all these topics with, marketing AI for me to gripe on. Steve, This reminds me of the audio version of that episode in Game of Thrones from a couple of years ago that was pitch black due to quote unquote artistic or creative freedoms. They made it so dark that no one could see what was happening because it was happening at night, and it was a moonless night, and thus it was fantastic. But literally no one could watch it. I I, I get so frustrated when, again, I watch something and I can't hear what's going on. I've got good ears. I've got decent equipment, decent systems. And when I can't hear what's going on because of, again, a ridiculous mix in a program, I'm not even griping on the like TV show versus commercial differences. I'm literally griping on in the middle of a show. They cannot mix this properly from big budget studios. This isn't like some homesprung thing. Who do we raise this with? Because this is, to Alex's point, I don't think this is a problem that we should be trying to solve. I think this has to come back to the studios to get their act together.
Well, one of the things I was going to comment on is that there's enough people out there who probably struggle to hear um, programming that is properly created, that does it seriously. There are a lot of people that do, and then if you're going to add accents and you're going to add other things, the intelligibility can get to be difficult, and especially when you are sitting with somebody and two people have different hearing levels, that and or that there's that's just going to naturally happen. So to your point, I think that we're making matters worse, and there needs to be a little bit more of a focus on the customer, the person who is actually consuming the content versus the creator, and the artistic value or their intent. So I would. I think that situations like this do lead to people getting frustrated with AV, quite honestly, and I think that that's something that we need to be cognizant of. And to your point about AI, there's a lot better uses for AI.
That is true. All right, gentlemen, let's hit our last story of the day. This comes to us from avnetwork.com. Check out the Cosm Dome. It is reinventing watching sports. If you've been on Instagram, TikTok, maybe even Facebook, I'm not sure, Twitter, X, however you want to look at it, you've probably seen videos of this. It is, shall we say, I think I kind of want to call it a sports bar-ish thing, but it's got a massive fine pitch LED wall that goes up into the ceiling, kind of like the Sphere, where they are showing a bunch of sporting events and other live events on this screen. It's incredibly immersive, and you're able to, again, watch it. The first video I saw of this was from the U of M game a couple weeks ago. And as they were throwing a touchdown into that end zone, it literally looked like you were sitting on that end zone line, watching it live from California when it was being played in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Steve, let me start with you on this. This is, I don't want to call it a mini Sphere, but it kind of has the feel and the effect of a mini Sphere from Las Vegas. Having these massive, highly immersive experiences for sports, is this going to change the way we as an industry, as a society, view the watching and the experiencing of sporting events or, concerts or anything like that? Is this going to drive, an immersive experience in the home?
I think for sports, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure about how this would be in a home, but I think that this is the first time that I've seen something that really rivals or gives you even something better than you could get if you were at a game. And I think that live sports right now are being threatened by AV experiences. People don't just want to watch one game; they want to watch multiple games, or they want to be able to have more of an experience and not have to deal with all of the red tape that goes along with being at a live event, whether it's the time to get in and to get out, and all the restrictions and the costs of that are incurred with having to be at a game, or the discomfort of sitting in certain seats. This, to me, I think people could actually spend the same amount of money they would spend to go to a live game and get something that they may not actually get elsewhere. And I don't know. I thought that this was very cool, and I've always looked for some way to be able to enjoy sports amongst other people, but in a comfortable surrounding where you're really going to be able to watch the game. To me, this satisfies that. And just to comment on what you said about the sphere, it certainly is reminiscent of that. I would say it's kind of like sports and with an IMAX feel, but even better, because it seemed immersive. And I mean, there are so many great things about it. I would highly recommend checking it out if you're a sports fan.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Alex, let's wrap this up with you. Cosm has a background in planetarium facilities, we'll say. What does this do? Does this open the eye of the consumer? And I'm not trying to stretch it to bring this back into the home theater realm, but I also kind of am. We've seen a massive kind of exodus out of the theater business to where homeowners are not dedicating spaces to a single type use room, right? They've moved away from that a lot. Do places like this and experiences like this kind of bring that back and make that more of a possibility for homeowners to say, you know what? I saw this thing. We went to it when we were in LA or Dallas. We saw, Manchester United play. It was stinking amazing. Maybe I kind of want a 12-seat place in my house where my friends could come over and we could watch football or soccer or, whatever other event in a big immersive experience.
Yeah, no, it's funny when I read this and then as you guys are talking, I'm really excited about this for reasons that might not initially be obvious. So the first one is when you think about a sports bar on the commercial AV side, you think of just normal TVs behind a bar. You don't really think of it as a new experience or a different experience. And so this immediately changes that. This immediately gives people a reason to go, a reason to get together, and an opportunity to experience AV in a way that's very different than how most people have experienced it. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing that comes up is there'll be a certain number of people who experience this and say, ooh, I want that at home. I need one of those. And unlike the Sphere, which some people say I want that at home, but very few are going to actually be able to afford it, I think this might open up more of an opportunity for something that's affordable in the crazy uber luxury projects that some of our dealers get to work in. So I think it will actually create more demand for a home cinema opportunity. But the reason is because you're not just talking about a bigger screen. I think the traditional home theater is basically a big TV, a big projector. It's a movie theater style experience. That's not what this is. This is a lot more immersive. This is a lot more compelling. And so I'm excited about, let's give people a new experience in the commercial AV side of things, and then drive some of the residential AV guys to say, how do I get that myself? And that's where I think we move things forward. So I really like this. I think this is pretty exciting. At the end of the day, I'm not going to go to watch a soccer game. That's not what's going to drive me. But it makes me think, what are the other ways that we can really leverage this? Are there, other sporting events, other media events? Are there certain types of movies? I mean, the Bob Dylan movie coming out later this year, maybe that would be a cool thing with a bunch of friends in this type of environment where it's not quite watching a concert, but there's a listening experience to the movie itself. I think this is going to open up some real possibilities. And the last thing I'll mention is I'm very vocal about how little I think virtual reality and even augmented reality as we see it today is going to matter. Think about the Apple Vision Pro. Everyone I know who's bought one, they're not using it. It's a cool demo for an hour and then it just collects dust. It's because it takes you outside of your social interaction. You can't really do that and be with others. It's too much of an escapist product. I think this is really cool because this is about connectivity. This is about getting a group of buddies together, getting your family together, and having a shared experience. And I think that's what we need more of. So I'm excited about this.
Really intrigued with this, and gonna have to check it out the next time I'm out there. Just as a minor point, you can get general admission into the hall or the dome for the hall you can get into for $11, which is fantastic. To get into the general admission into the hall and or the dome, $22. Now, I also looked at a group of 5 seats so that we can invite some friends, Steve. And it's, 600 and change in the reserved fancy seating. But you could get in and experience this for a fairly affordable price, which is really, really cool. The last kind of tidbit I just want to throw out there is the Sphere just held their first sporting event with UFC over on Saturday there. And this was the first, to my knowledge, the first time that they've had a sporting event that incorporates multiple senses, right? Because in the Sphere, those seats have some form of, I'm going to say D-box. I don't know if it's D-box, but they have some form of motion so that when the fighters were getting punched, people in the audience were feeling that through the chair, which I think is, again, really groundbreaking in the immersive world to see that in a live event, which is really, really cool. All right, gentlemen, we are going to leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining us. Steve, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Control Concepts, where can they do that?
You can find me on social media at Steve Greenblatt, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net, but also here on AVNation.tv, and as I host the State of Control with Rich Vergoza, and we talk about control programming and automation. And I also have another podcast called Ask the Programmer with James King, if you want to check that out as well.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right, Alex, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Josh.ai, where can they do that?
Best thing is go to the website, Josh.ai. You can also reach out to me directly, Alex at Josh.ai.
Excellent. Thank you both again for joining us. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter, X, or every other social platform at Matt D. Scott. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.